Good morning. Yesterday I went to work out, and when I got ready to go to bed, I realized that I had left my Kindle in the workout room. I bet you never do anything like that. And I bet you think maybe you've already turned off your cell phone. But this could be that one occasion when you actually forgot, but thought you did. So if you would make sure it's in the stun position. Good morning. Today is Youth Sunday at St. Paul's, meaning that our young people are in charge of all the services. So Corbin Little was in the first service. Joshua Rodke will be leaving to go in the 11 o'clock service. So Joshua and Corbin and John and Tim are the ones that make sure that those of you who watch online get to do that. And thank you for what they do. So we begin in silence because it's our way of bringing to mind our intention. We're still working on technical issues in the audience. It's been taken care of now. Okay. We begin in silence because it's a way to express our intention. Intention is another word for practice. To be here and to be aware that we live inside the heart of sacred mystery, and that sacred mystery seeks to find expression through how we live. So if it helps to close your eyes, let's begin in silence. May grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in our mouths and in our speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. And may grace be at our ends and at our departing. May we come to know who we truly are. And may because of what we do here, we grow in patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Amen. So, whether you are here in person or online, I just wanted to say again what I said last week about how grateful I am that we get to do this. That this is kind of an oasis for a lot of people, and we get that, especially from those of you who are online being able to watch. And just let you be aware that if you have not done so, you can sign up for the newsletters, the community newsletter, or the newsletter that goes out that will have the summary of today's talk, and a link to the video and the audio will be up on Tuesday. No matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So we've been talking about the wayless way, and I have a special announcement to make today. This is a photograph of Nadia Bowles-Weber. She is an ordained Lutheran minister. She is the author of 3 best-selling New York Times books. And I'm going to read what it says on her website. She writes and speaks about her personal failings, recovery, grace, faith, and really what the hell else she wants to. And she herself wrote a prayer, God, please help me not to be an asshole, is about as common a prayer as I pray in my life. That woman is going to be here in this space on March the 22nd. and she'll be preaching on the next day, Sunday, both services. And Dr. McDonald has already said he will speak to her about watching her language. But in this place on Saturday night, she's going to have free will to do what she wants to. She will talk, and then there will be a time for Q&A. That Saturday night event is by registration, and you can register now. We've already had people from as far away as West Virginia and Arizona to register. So those of you who are here or who are watching online are getting a first shot at registering for this, because I promise you it will sell out. She's very popular and people will want to come and hear her. So I hope you do that. That'll be register now. So we are in this energy field that we sometimes call God, that's evolving and expanding and creative and entangled. And our time today is a graphic example of all of that, particularly the thing about entanglement. We were having dinner at my daughter's house, who was sitting here, Sabrina and Rob Ellett, on Christmas, and at the end of the dinner, as it was winding down, she said to me, Bill, she doesn't call me Dad. I tried to get them to call me Worshipful Lord and Master, but that never took. She said, I've met a man that you need to meet. And he's somebody who has a great story to tell, and we're trying to make sure that he has an opportunity to tell that story and get it out. So those of you who have access to somebody who might want to hear what you're about to hear today, keep that in mind. So I said to her, okay, send me his name. And she did. And I got with him and arranged a phone call with Malcolm Scott. And I could tell within the first 20 seconds that we had a connection. And what I thought would be like a 5 or 10 minute call stretched about an hour. And I told Malcolm, I said, I would love to have you come here. This is in January. I would love to have you come here and speak. And could we meet for coffee? And sure. So we did that. But before we got off the phone, I said, do you have a photograph of yourself that you could send me for publicity, which you see? But he said, well, I've been on TV. And I thought, well, sure, local news. His story was featured on Dateline. So you can go on YouTube, or if you have Peacock, you can search for Long Road to Freedom, and you can see Malcolm's story there, which you're going to hear some about today. Malcolm and I arranged for coffee, and again, there was this immediate connection. And 15, 20-minute coffee stretched to 2 hours. And I asked him if he would just come tell his story today, and that's what he's going to do. He'll speak, and then he and I will probably chat, maybe open for some questions. And he's agreed to stay after this to visit with you. You're about to meet a remarkable human being and hear a remarkable story. Please give a warm welcome to Malcolm Scott. Malcolm.
All right, let me make sure. Can everybody hear me out there? Man, thank you all for having me to here today. This is awesome. I love it. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill, for that amazing introduction. That was good. And thank you, too, Sabrina and Rob, for sharing with Dad, about my story a little bit, to give me the opportunity to come in here and share it with you all today. Also, thank you all for giving me your time and your attention today. And I hope the words that I share with you today will resonate with you and have an impact on your lives going forward. I hope that this message that I want to convey with you today actually sticks, and it gives you also an opportunity to utilize the tools that I share with you today in your own lives going forward. So, all right. Now, man, Hey, thank you all for having me here today. Let's give yourselves a hand for coming in here, man. We got to break the ice a little bit. All right, yeah, let's break the ice a little bit. So what I want to talk to you all today about is going to be resilience, perseverance, and forgiveness, right? Those are the three topics that I want to really share, with the main one being resilience. So I'll give a little introduction of who I am. You know, the story on Dateline may share some of it, but I wanted to let you all know. So I come from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have 12 brothers and sisters. Yeah. I always get that noise like, oh, wow. Yeah, 7 sisters, 5 brothers, huge family. And it was, man, we had love. You know, we had a lot of love. We might not have a lot of money, but we definitely had a lot of love in the family. And we are a close-knit family. Even to this day, we are still very close. Some of my family are still in Oklahoma, and actually some of them live out here in Houston, between Houston and Katy, where I'm at right now myself. So, you know, we kind of follow each other around a little bit too. Thank you, Bill. But yes, so I grew up on the north side of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I am. And, you know, I don't know if you ever heard of Black Wall Street. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm from, and you know, I got to see, you know, kind of the aftermath of the Black Wall Street. You know, I got to hear a little bit about it from my great grandmother and things like that, and you know how great it was and everything. But I only got to kind of see the other side, you know, of it as well. But even in the midst of everything that was going on, you know, where I come from, where I grew up at, I never felt like I didn't have still a lot of the blessings that come with life. You know what I mean? I think it's because my family, my mother and father were Christian faith, very strong, my mother especially, and she was like a servant to the people. You know, even though she had all of us, 12, 13 kids, she still didn't mind, you know, bringing a neighbor in if they were hungry, if they needed something to eat or whatever the case may be. She was always that way. She was just of service. And I think that's where I get it from myself, to be of service. And that's what I'm here for you today. It's not about really me, right? It's not about me and my story. What I do this for is to share with you not just my story, but the tools that I use to overcome the situation that I went through, right? Because I want you all to be able to utilize those things without having to go through what I went through, right? But you can still put it into your own lives and your own, you know, things that you may go through, because we all have our own pains, right? We all have our own pains. We all have our own, you know, sufferings and things like that as well. And we all look to find that way to overcome those obstacles when they come into our life, right? So that's what I really wanted to come here and kind of share with you all today. So as I thank you all for coming, I wanted to kind of get back into that resilience, right? The resilience is that main word that I wanted to speak upon today with you as we go into this message. And when I look back, I want to just kind of go into a definition for you. It says resilience is the ability to adapt to difficult situations and bounce back from adversity. We've all had to go through some of those type of situations, right? Adversity in life, you know, those tough times, and we felt like, man, I want to give in. But we have to have that resilience to keep on pushing through it in whatever that situation is, right? And that's a quality that is very important in everyday life, whether it's in our careers or in our personal life as well, right? So kind of going through that, for me, like I said, my mother planted a seed in me early on in life. She said, son, God has a special plan just for you. You know, I like I said, I had so many brothers and sisters, sometimes you feel like you can kind of get lost in the crowd. But she made sure none of us did. especially me, right? She made sure that I never felt lost in the crowd. She always told me, God has a special plan just for you. And that plan was of resilience. And I needed that resilience because years later, at 17 years old, I was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of shooting with intent to kill, and a 4th count of use of a vehicle to facilitate discharge of a firearm. On September 11th, 1994, they locked me up in Tulsa County Jail, and I wouldn't see home again for another 22 years. So, in that time, though, now you see why I say that resilience became very important for me. And those lessons that my mother taught me as a young child came back to me, and they came in very handy as I was going through my situation. So, just kind of to break it down, like I said, it's September 11th, and then I was arrested. Finally, in 1995, about 14 months later, on November 9th, I was sentenced to that life without, plus that 170 years. Yeah. Life plus 170 years in prison, and they told me basically you're going to spend the rest of your natural life in prison. I was devastated. I was 17 years old. I'd never been incarcerated before in my life. I was afraid. I was heartbroken. But you know something else? I was angry. But it wasn't just because, I had went and committed a crime, and so I needed to go into prison because of what I did. No, that wasn't why I was angry. I was angry because I was incarcerated for something that I had absolutely nothing to do with. And nobody wanted to hear me. Nobody was willing to listen. Everyone had turned their back on me, except for my family. And that's why family is so important to me. That's why I say we're so close. When the whole world said, oh, he's a murderer, they said, no, he's not. My mother said, he's my son. My father said, he's my son. My sisters and brothers said, that's my brother. We love him. And we're going to stand right beside him. And we're going to fight with him every day, no matter how many days it takes. And they stood by me. They didn't turn their back. And I think a lot of the perseverance that come into play for me came from that love that I had and that love that came from my family that stood by my side. When I was in the Tulsa County Jail, and the first time my mother and father came to see me in the visiting room, they said to me, we don't know what happened. That's really not our concern. But we want you to be honest with us. And I said, Mama, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I had nothing to do with it. And she said to me, she said, well, we're going to stand right here with you. We're going to fight every day to help you prove your innocence. You know we don't have a lot of money, but we're going to do everything we can. And just know that we love you and we'll be right by your side. A lot of the guys in there didn't have that when I was inside the prison system. It was different for me. And I knew it the first time they put me on the yard. I understood. I always felt like you're not supposed to be here. This is not the place for you. But like I said, I still had that fear of what was ahead of me because I didn't know. I never had that situation happen to me before. I was still wondering, how am I going to find a way to get out of this situation? Through the years, though, I could sit up here and I could say to you all, I always held on tight to my faith, and I knew God was going to release me and help me prove my innocence. I knew he was going to find a way. I could get up here and tell you, that I was always that way for those whole 20 years. But I wouldn't be being honest with you. And that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to be honest with you. Because we all, like I said earlier, we go through our adversities in life. And sometimes we don't always handle them in our best version of ourselves. And I was still young. And so I was angry. And a lot of that anger and frustration kept me in disciplinary incidents, kept me going back and forth to the maximum security prison because of disciplinary actions. Because I was so mad, I was like wanting to take it out on everybody else around me for them putting me in prison for something I had absolutely nothing to do with. And it's like I almost took on that attitude of, well, if I'm going to be here with these animals, then I have to be like one of them to survive. And I thought it was being tough, but it was really because I was afraid. And so for that first 10 years that I was in the system, like I said, it was back and forth, in and out of maximum security prisons, going through the worst of situations. But going through that, I was trying to find a way to do it on my own, you see. I had decided God has abandoned me. I have to find a way to fight this thing on my own. And so I did all type of things, trying to find a way to pay for a lawyer, doing illegal things in the system, trying to pay for a lawyer to find a way to get them to talk for me, to speak to the judge, to let him know, man, I am innocent. Although I had good intentions, the tools that I utilized were not. And it cost me dearly. It almost cost me my life. But like I said, I had come to that point where I had basically given up so much on my faith, almost. Still wondering why. Why am I being put through this? But you know something? Even though I may have got to that point, there was still somebody who didn't give up on me. It was my mother. Even when I wanted to say, no, I can't do this anymore. When I wanted to just take my own life sometimes. She said, no. God has a plan for you, son. But what you have to understand is, as long as you continue to show the world a guilty person, then that's what you're going to be seen as. You can't continue to say, I'm innocent, but you're showing a whole negative outlook. You're feeling it inside, you have negative in your heart. Your actions are showing negativity. That is not what's going to give anyone a reason to listen to you. So I bumped my head like I said, ended up in the maximum security prisons. But it was that last time. It was that last time. It's probably around 2005, like I said, about 10 years into my sentence. I went to Oklahoma State Prison, maximum security, 23 hours locked down. You get about a 10-minute shower. You go right back to your cell. You go into a concrete square for recreation, one at a time, and back to your cell. Every meal that you get is shoved through a hole in your door. Some of those meals, I'm not sure exactly what they were. Yeah, mystery meat, right? But I can laugh at it now. But man, I'll tell you. But that was the harsh reality. But you know, it's like they say, you keep trying to do the same thing over, you got to expect the same results. And that's what I got. And it was like, do you like these mystery meals? You know? But it was that last time that I was in the system at this maximum security prison that it finally resonated deep within me. I had been hanging on a string, getting through it, right? Still holding on, I think, to the fact that I knew I was innocent was probably one of the things that really kept me at least trying to push forward. And I would write thousands of letters to anybody that were willing to hear me. And that last time, I remember, my mother, she already knew where I was, because when you call home, it automatically tells them exactly what prison that you're in. So when I got there, and I was there about 6 months this time, and I finally got a phone call. You get one phone call a month, and it's a 10-minute phone call. And you better make sure that they're prepared, because if they don't answer, that's your next month is before you get that next 10-minute call. So I wrote letters to let them know, hey, I'm going to call on this day at this exact time. And I finally got to talk to my mother. As soon as she answered, she knew, because they told her, you have a call from Malcolm Scott at Oklahoma State Prison, maximum security. So when she answered, she said, you back over there again. Boy, you back over there again, right? That's how my mother would talk. But I said, yes, ma'am. She said, son, you have to learn to forgive. You have to forgive. You have to forgive. You holding all this anger inside. I know, I understand that you felt like you've been done wrong. But there's a reason for everything that happens in life. But you can't continue to take this anger out on everyone around you because of whatever you're going through in life yourself. She said, son, I'm on my third stroke. Half her body had got paralyzed. When she talked to me, you could tell it was almost like a mumble. She said, I want you to come home. But you're not going to get here like this. You have to forgive. And after that phone call with my mother, I went back to my cell. And I was just sitting on my bunk. We have 2 bunks in these small cells. And I was sitting on the bunk, just kind of in deep thought, when a lot of ruckus started happening. Like I heard, you could tell anytime guards, the correctional officers, are running up the stairs, you can kind of hear it. And so I got up off my bunk and kind of went to the small window that we have in our cells that you can look out of. And I see all the guards kind of running up here to the cell next door to me. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what's going on over there. It was an older guy over there that had been in for almost 40 years plus. He had spent most of his life in prison. And I used to talk to him sometimes over the vent, just kind of ask questions like, how is it, man, that you were able to go through this for this long? And, why haven't you been able to get out? And we just used to have these talks because he had a life sentence as well. And a lot of it that he would speak upon, I would just be like, man, I don't want to have to go through all that. But anyway, they run up to his cell. And all the correctional officers, like 5 or 6 of them, ran up to the cell. I can't really see in there, but I just kind of see them running by. And I hear, a little commotion over there in the same vent that I used to get up and talk to him over the vent a lot of times, because the cells were right next to each other. And so I kind of went to the window, and I'm just kind of looking to see what's going on, if I can, find out what's going on. And eventually, officers come running out. They come running out of the cell, and they go to get the nurses, right? And they end up bringing a gurney up there. And they bring a gurney up, and they're in there for a little while longer. And then finally, all the officers start coming out, and they were just kind of talking to each other, and you could just kind of hear conversations and things like that as they're walking out. But I'm still not understanding what's going on. I'm still trying to see. And eventually, the nurses came out, and they had the gurney. And on the gurney was this guy who had been in for 40-some years, spent most of his adult life right there in the prison. And he was on the gurney. And as they wheeled him by, all I could see was his foot at the bottom. It was almost blue. I knew he was gone. At that point, I kind of just slowly backed away from the window and went and sit back on my bunk. And as I was sitting on my bunk, I started thinking about him. He had this life sentence. He had been in all these years. He had a family out there. He had been back and forth to these maximum security prisons because he had given up hope until he died. And you know what I seen? Me. It was me. It was me on that gurney that rolled by. It was the most humbling experience I had in my life. I thank that man every single day because his death actually changed my life. When I started to think, I said, man, what my mother is telling me, my mother's getting older. 3 strokes. And you're not getting younger in here. You're not doing anything to help yourself. It's time to make a change. And it was like at that point, there was a shift in my mind and in my heart. because I felt that his mercy, the passing, you know, it's just like when Jesus died on the cross for us. We got to show gratitude for that. And I had to realize, man, unless you start making changes in your life right now, that's your fate. But not only did I decide at that point that it was time to make some major changes in how I was approaching my situation and proving my innocence, but it was also time for me to find a way to get back to who I truly was, my authenticity, my true self. That young kid that grew up in this strong Christian home, watching my mother be of service to so many. I grew up with love. I didn't grow up with hate. I didn't grow up with anger. So it was time to not be afraid anymore, to show courage, that resilience, that perseverance, and finally the forgiveness. It was time to forgive. And at that point, I not only realized that it wasn't simply for me to forgive those who I felt wronged me, but I also forgive myself. I didn't realize that pain was a two-edged sword. And so when I was able to finally say, man, I have to release this. I have to release this anger. And it's not going to be predicated upon whether they deserve my forgiveness or not. That's not what this is for. This is for your own peace of mind. And so I decided at that point it wasn't just about simply finding a way to prove my innocence. No, that was not going to be the reason I'm doing this. I wanted to do this because I wanted to get back to who I truly was. And I decided then, I said, no matter what, whether it's 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, or if I never get out of here, never again will I carry that self that's outside of me. Never again will I continue to be that animal that I thought I needed to be to survive in this system. Be who you truly are, no matter what it is. And I decided no matter what happened with me going forward, I was going to get back to that love of self and that love of those around me, that love of humanity. People ask me so many times, why don't you have that resentment? Why aren't you still angry? I released it. I gave it to God. And when I was able to release that pain, to release that anger and forgive, it was exhilarating. Even though I was still in that cell, I felt more free than I had ever been since the day that they locked me up. And I said, man, this feels too good. I can't let this go again. And so I started a new journey, basically, right? This was the second part of that 22 years. And so I got back to who I truly was, and I started to carry myself as that man. I learned to be able to be polite to people and respectable to people no matter what the situation. And you know what? He started opening doors for me. he started opening doors for me. In 2006, I met a man named Eric Cullen, a private investigator. Just started. He was brand new, and he was just reaching out to whoever he could in the system to see if he can, get somebody that might need his help. And me, been writing letters after letter after letter. Like I said, I wrote thousands of letters to people just, asking anybody that would listen, that would help me. And he answered my letter. For anybody else, they think, oh, it's just a, advertisement or whatever. For me, though, man, that was almost a lifeline. I felt like, oh, finally, a breakthrough. And I sit down and, I wrote him back and just kind of went through everything in my case and broke everything down. Just like I did so many other times before with all these letters and letters asking for people to help me. But what happened was some things going on that I didn't even know about that was going on out there in the streets, in this free world, while I was still incarcerated. So when he received my letter, the same time he received my letter, he received a letter from my co-defendant that was on the case with me. Same letter. And he wrote up everything. He said, man, I was just amazed that how everything that you both were saying was the same. It was like the stories weren't conflicting. I didn't feel like, something was made up. He said, but you know what really, really, really made me decide that you guys needed help? He said, I went to a rally, a gang prevention rally. And, his father was a police officer. And, and he was always, doing, charity work and things like that. He was always for trying to, stop with the gangs and the things like that and help the youth. And so he was at one of these rallies, and he said when he was out there, it was a guy up on the podium speaking, and he was just talking about how he had changed his life and how he used to be in a gang and things like this. And he said his name, and he said, wow, where did I hear that name before? And he said he remembered. He said Malcolm Scott was sharing the same name with me in that letter that he wrote. And he said, so when the guy finished talking, and he came down and he actually went and introduced himself to the guy and kind of wanted to talk to him and pulled him to the side. And he said, man, that's amazing, man, that you've changed your life and things like that. And the guy was, excited and telling him, I did some bad things in my past, but I'm ready to, make a change. And, I had a second chance. So I want to make the best of that second chance. And so Eric said to him, he said, man, that's amazing, brother. I'm proud of you. He said, so what do you think about giving Malcolm Scott and DeMarco Carpenter a second chance? DeMarco Carpenter's my co-defendant. And he said when he said that to the guy, his eyes just kind of got big. And then he dropped his head. You see, this guy that he was speaking about is the same guy that testified on us at our trial, who lied on us and said that we had actually committed this crime that we didn't do. So he said as soon as he dropped his head and he raised it up and he started trying to explain immediately, he said, man, I'm really sorry about what happened to them. The police pressured me to say this. I had a case myself, and they told me if I didn't say it was them, that I was going to end up getting charges. Man, I was only 16 years old. I was afraid. And I just did what they told me to do. And so Eric said at that point right there, he said, I knew I got to help him. And I told Eric, I said, man, I don't have a lot of money. You know, my family, I got 12 brothers and sisters out there my parents is trying to take care of. They can't afford no big time lawyers, no O.J. Simpson defense the team. So he said, man, I'm going to help you. I'm going to do everything I can for you guys. I'm not worried about the money. And so he stayed and he helped us. He connected us with the Innocence Project, a huge organization that here today I still speak in their behalf. I love them. And connected with the Oklahoma Innocence version, Oklahoma Innocence Project chapter in Oklahoma. And so when they took my case on in 2010, it kind of went from there. They took my case on, and Eric did the investigative work. He ended up connecting with other witnesses. Oh man, it was so many things he started to find out. All types of things started to open up. But it didn't happen overnight. No, not by a long shot. Remember, I didn't come home till years later. So in 2010, I was still fighting, still going through it. And they were doing everything they could for me out there as well. And then, in 2014, the Oklahoma Innocence Project lawyers came to me. They had been fighting hard, doing everything they could. And they even found out who the guy was who actually committed the crime. But they couldn't get him to come forward. And so Christina Green, my attorney from the Oklahoma Innocence Project, she came to the prison to visit me. And it was a surprise visit. I said, man, I wonder what this is about. I wasn't prepared, really. And so she came to see me, and we sit down to talk. And I said, she said, Malcolm, well, I got some good news and a little bit of bad news. I said, well, I guess go ahead and tell me the good news. He said, well, the Oklahoma Sooners won. Yeah, I'll never forget it. I said, oh, the Oklahoma Sooners won. Okay, yes, all right. But I said, so what's the bad news? She said, unfortunately, we're going to have to close your case. He said, we're going to have to close your case. We're sorry, but we're doing everything we could. We've gotten, certain witnesses to admit that they lied and things like that. We've got those affidavits, but we still don't have, the guy that actually did it doesn't want to speak up. And his lawyers are even advising him not to. At this point, there's nothing else we can do. So we have to close the case. This was 2014. It was like just when I thought we had the momentum, over these years, by then I had made these changes in my life and I was living a positive, good life. And I was like, man, I thought we was there. So when I went back to my cell, and I found out the guy who actually committed the crime, who they were saying the lawyers weren't wanting him, and they advised him not to speak. Apparently, he had another case himself. So he was going through litigation on that. And the lawyers were telling him, you don't want to put this on you right now. Apparently, when he had first got incarcerated, he had gotten 5 years for accessory on the case. The case I was on. Yeah. Said that he had told him when he got caught with the murder weapon and everything, that it wasn't him that did it. He let me and my co-defendant borrow it. And then we brought everything back to him once we were finished. Yeah. Yeah. They dropped his charges down to accessory after the fact, and they let him out. 9 months later, he went and committed another murder and beat a guy to death with a baseball bat in the back of a Quick Trip convenience store, and took down 2 more people with him. They all went to death row. So now he's fighting this case up here. And they're telling him, we're trying to fight for your life for you. If you do this, you're definitely not going to win any appeals from this death penalty. So you're basically saying you're ready to die if you decide to step forward and tell the truth about this case, this other case that those 2 guys are on. So this is the dilemma. So when I find out all this from Christine, I'm sitting there, and I had a friend of mine, another guy who had been in quite a while. He used to be in the law library, looking over cases and things like that, just like me, just trying to find, anything I could find to help me on my case. And we had kind of got to know each other and talked a lot. And so when I sit down with him and I spoke to him. I said, man, they're closing my case. They said there's nothing else left I can do. The guy on death row has decided, he wants to live, so that means you're going to have to die here. And he said to me, how long is it going to be before he goes, his execution date? Well, I said, his execution day is set for a couple of weeks from now. Yeah. He said, well, man, that means you need to be getting on it. I don't know what you're sitting around here talking to me for. You need to be trying to talk to those lawyers. You need to be trying to write letters to somebody. Give this guy a change of heart. You saying you've been writing these letters, you've been doing everything you could. Now is the time, now, more than ever. This is your last opportunity, man. I don't have anybody that I know committed to this crime that's willing to step up for me. I wish I was in your shoes. I'd already be writing, is what he said to me. I said, you're right. And that night, I sat down at my desk and I poured everything out of me. Everything out of me onto that paper. Begging them to give me a second chance at my life. I was up all night long, but I wasn't tired because this is my life we're talking about. And when I finally went over it and proofread it and I sent it out, I said, I'm sending this out. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going on back to my day. And I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep believing. And so, as I went on about my day, I had a little job inside the system that I would go to every day, each morning. And, I had even began to, do programs and things like that because I had, start to feel like if you're going to believe it, you got to live it. Don't live it like you're living with a life plus 170 years and you're never getting out of here. You got to live like you're about to get out of here tomorrow. So you need to start preparing yourself, get educated, right? Do whatever it is. And I wanted to be, into fitness and things like that because that's always what I've been growing up. And so I would study the books, read, learn as much as I could, preparing myself for when I was going home. I had put that in my heart. I had put that in my mind. And people would even ask me, some of the guys, and say, man, what are you doing all that for? Man, you got a life sentence. You're never going to be able to utilize this information. Yes, I will. God got a plan for me. And so as I was going on about my day, and I got called back from work one day, and they said, man, your lawyers is on the phone. I said, man, well, I don't have any lawyers because they closed the case already. He said, well, somebody's on the phone for you. They want to talk to you. We need you to come on back to the unit. I said, okay. So I go back to the unit, and the case manager, the guy who, whoever goes over your case, talks to you about paroles and things like that, who we hardly ever see. But he put me into his office. He said, man, your attorneys want to speak to you. They told us to give them a call when we got you here in the office. So when I got into the office, I sit down. He gave him a call. He called Christina Green again. And so when she called, he called her, and she answered the phone. I said, hey, how you doing, Christina? I heard you guys wanted to speak with me. She said, yes. I said, so what's going on? She said, well, I said, did the Sooners win again? I hope they won. She said, nah, the Sooners did win, but I got something even better. She said, apparently, I don't know what's going on, but somebody's on your side. She said, the attorneys and Michael Wilson have had a change of heart. Remember, this is only probably a week now, less than a week, that he's about to get executed. And she said, they've had a change of heart. And Michael Wilson has decided to come forward and tell us everything. Tell us where all the evidence is and tell us the truth. She said, he decided to come forward. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even speak. It was like everything around me just kind of started moving in slow motion. And I said, wow. Thank God. So when I went back to my unit that day, and first person I shared it with was my buddy, who told me, man, it's time for you to write that letter. And I said, man, I got some of the best news ever. And he said, man, God's good, man. Utilize it. Don't just use it for yourself, but make sure you use that. Tell this story. For us that can never get to tell their story. Help somebody else that may go through it, or whatever it may be that they go through in life. If you can be of service, be of service. And I took them words with me. So 2 days before Michael Wilson was scheduled for execution, he sat down with our lawyers and gave a full confession. And when he went, and it was time, he even told, when they asked him, what is your last words? He said, I want you to tell my daughters I love them, and I want y'all to know that Malcolm Scott and DeMarco Carpenter are innocent men. His last words. So, 2 days later, he was executed. But the evidence was enough to get us back in court. It didn't happen overnight, though, right? It was still a couple years later. I finally, it still was a couple of years later. You know, you would think, you know, in the movies, it's, oh man, he's innocent, let him go. You're a free man, right? No, it's not quite the same, right? That evidence is still going to get scrutinized, right? They still got to go through the proper channels and things like that. And so I continue to have to be patient, right? I have to be patient. Hey, I have been patient for those 20 years. I might as well be patient a couple of more. I had to be. Because I had made that decision, you know? It wasn't being predicated upon my release of who I was going to be as a man. Like I said, I gave it to God. He had got me this far, so I had to keep on believing. Finally, May 9th, 2016, Tulsa County Jail, I went in front of Judge Sharon Holmes. My mother was right there. She had to come in on a wheelchair, but she made it. And my family was right there with her. And when the judge finally said, Malcolm Scott, I find you factually innocent. You're a free man. You can go home.
I have 105 questions to ask you, and we don't have any time. Malcolm has agreed to stay and answer any questions. I was going to ask you
We can still talk.
Two quick questions. One of them I know the answer to. I was going to say, who's the most important person? I know your wife is here and your 2-year-old son is downstairs, but your mom, that was your rock.
She was my rock. She was. She was definitely my rock. She made sure, like, my little brothers and sisters, like, they would write little letters when they were really little and write pictures and draw pictures on crayons and things like that. And she would put them in the letters and send them to me in the mail. And it was like those letters, even though it was scribbled and I don't know what it might have said, but it was just that intention, right? To show me that you have a reason to live.
Well, I want to tell you, you're a better man than I am, because I want to go find those two policemen and beat them up, you know? But I got work to do. Maybe
Right.
you could work with me and help me be a better man.
Yes. That's
That's
what
it's
it's
remarkable.
about. Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Forgiveness, man. Forgiveness is what catapulted everything for me, right? I mean, the resilience of being able to go through it.
Could I ask you,
but
would you be willing to run for public office? We need people like you in public office.
hey, man, I'm here to serve the people.
So feel free to, if you have a speaking opportunity for Malcolm, talk to him about it. Come up and spend time with him. He's willing to stay. And no matter where you go, no matter what happens this week, remember this: you carry precious cargo. So watch your step, and I'll see you here next week. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me.